Hi. Before we begin 3 true scary stories from Reddit, I like to say that the third story is from Reddit No Sleep, and it also has a link to a child's drawing in the description below that has to do with the story itself. So, let's begin. Number 1. Hi again. So, because everyone seemed to like the story I shared about my family stalker, I thought I'd share another creepy story. However, this happened to my godmother, who I'm very close with. She and my mother have been friends since 4th grade. This took place during the 70s, and my godmother was about 16 or 17 at the time. So, one day, she was doing homework in the living room when the phone rang. Her mom picked it up, and before she could say anything, she got a funny look on her face and started laughing. My godmother said, "What is it? Who was that?" Her mom said someone just playing some music over the phone, probably a wrong number. A few days later, my godmother was home alone when the phone rang. She picked it up and the song "Hello, It's Me" by Todd Rundgren started to play. You should look up the lyrics. My godmother smiled and thought it was the guy she was dating at the time. She hung up and the next day at school brought it up to the guy she was seeing. He looked confused and said he never called her. She brushed it off as someone who had a crush on her. The phone calls were coming in about 5 times a day now, and she was both annoyed and freaked out. Her parents, however, just thought it was someone who liked her. And each time she picked up the phone, that song was playing. Finally, one day when she answered the phone, she said, "Look, who are you? You've been driving me and my family insane for the past month, so knock it off." But that only seemed to make it worse, because now she was getting calls around 1 in the morning. Fast forward to about 2 months. This had been going on for a while, and one day, my godmother decided to go to the record shop with some friends. While she was there, she noticed this middle-aged guy looking at her. She didn't think anything of it until he walked up close to her and started looking at some records. And then, he takes a Todd Rundgren record, shows it to her, and started whistling "Hello, It's Me," the song that was playing whenever she answered the phone. And with that, she told her friends that she didn't feel well and left. And just like that, the call stopped. Don't know what this guy's intentions were, but they definitely were not good. Number 2. I recently found this subreddit and felt compelled to finally share the story with Reddit on account of Halloween. It all happened to my father one stormy night in Glenwood, Colorado. It was the 80s. My father was an electrical engineer who was just returning from a job site. He worked long hours, and it wasn't uncommon for him to be heading home around midnight to the small cabin he shared with a friend tucked back in the canyon walls. It was pouring rain. Lightning flashed only to illuminate the murky puddled patches of washed-out terrain. As my father rounded the corner upon the dirt road, he passed a large willow tree. As his headlights crossed its base, he noticed someone was crouched underneath it. It was a woman who seemed to be in her late 20s, with long and tangled blonde hair. She had on fairly casual clothing and carried a somewhat large bundle in her arms wrapped in cloth. My father, being the gentleman that he was, decided to pull over and offered her to take shelter from the storm in his cabin just up the road. She smiled and thanked him as she got into his vehicle. She explained that she had been on a hike through the canyon that day when the storm hit and had been caught off guard by the rain. My dad smiled and pointed out that she wasn't exactly wearing the best clothing or shoes to go on a hike. She laughed and said she had left her place on a whim unprepared. He asked if she needed him to dry anything at his place, pointing to the bundle she held tightly under her arm. Her voice suddenly got very stern and stated, "No." When my father asked her where she lived around here, things started to get strange. She started telling my dad she had no family or friends in the area, and was quite vague when asked details of where she lived. All she responded with was that it was too far to drive tonight in this kind of weather. At this point, my dad said he felt she was a bit off, but chalked it up to her exhaustion from hiking and standing out in the storm for several hours. As they entered the cabin, my dad remembered that his roommate had left that morning to take a trip out of town, and wouldn't be back for several days. My dad would have offered her his friend's room, but didn't feel comfortable doing so without her permission. Remember, this was the 80s. Pocket cell phones weren't on everyone yet. My dad told her that she was welcome to sleep on the couch and dry off as he handed her several towels. She took them from him with her right hand, but still never let go of the bundle she hugged under her left arm. My dad at this point realized she had never given him her name, so he introduced himself. "Nice to meet you," she replied. "My name is Mary Lou." My father started to feel a bit more comfortable and turned on the television for her, then handed over the remote. She scanned through the channels, finally deciding on a gangster flick. The scene involved a bunch of mobsters getting shot to pieces. Mary found this to be quite amusing, and started to laugh in a crackling, high-pitched tone. My dad started to get a bit creeped out by this. She was enjoying it a little too much, he said. Then my dad asked her about her life, and things took a turn for the worse. When asked if she was in a relationship, she pointed down at her belt buckle and told my dad the story of her breakup. She claimed her last boyfriend wanted to be domineering over her, and to this she responded by bludgeoning him half to death in his gravel driveway with her belt buckle, the same one she was wearing. He kept saying "Stop, please stop," and begging, but I wouldn't show him any mercy, she said with a note of pride in her voice. My dad asked if he had abused her or if she was reacting defensively, and she merely scoffed and said, "No, otherwise he'd be dead." My father's unease grew as the conversation progressed. She told him about her mother dying on the operating table, and how the surgeon who had been working on her walked out covered in blood and said that she would be fine. How was she supposed to be okay with all of her guts in the trash can? She spewed. Then she laughed again, glancing back at the TV screen littered with bullet-riddled corpses. I love the sight of blood. It excites me. Turns me on, you know? Death. Draining them to death. At this point, my dad was officially done. He was bigger and stronger than she was. He was quite streetwise and had seen plenty of horrors himself. But the way she spoke with a violent confidence, combined with her sure grip upon the bundle which lay under her arm, sent chills down his spine. He needed a plan. Finally, an idea popped up into my father's head. "I have a friend who is a priest in town. He has access to several shelters funded by the church. You will be a lot more comfortable there instead of on our couch. They can feed you too, and arrange a ride for you to get home in the morning. I can call him right now. He's only a few miles from here," he stated reassuringly. Mary Lou's tone brightened to match his. "That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much." My father smiled, hiding his relief. "Of course. It's the least I can do for you." As my dad walked over to the phone and began to dial the number, Mary Lou erupted in a low, guttural growl. "I hate priests. I hate priests." She didn't yell it. She didn't scream it. She said it with a tired hatred, a clear, direct, audible whisper of disdain, from the bottom of her heart, with an unflinching resolve. My dad had enough. This wasn't a game to play anymore. This was beyond a stranger with odd tendencies. A darkness with coil cruelty had crossed the threshold of his door. "You need to leave, and you need to leave now," my dad said, pointing to the front of the cabin. "There's the door. I can't have you in here and feel comfortable. I'm sorry, but the storm has stopped, and I hate to have you walk in the dark, but that's the way that this has to go. Please leave." Mary Lou gazed upon him, expressionless, and finally just shrugged. My father walked her out, standing close to her in the event that the bundle concealed some type of weapon. He wasn't taking any further chances. She smiled at him as she slowly walked out onto the front porch. "Goodbye for now. See you when I see you," she said calmly. With that, she walked down the long dirt road, with a single street light upon its path. She looked back one last time before crossing the light and disappearing, enveloped by the darkness with no trace of her to be seen. My dad called the police the next day, concerned that she may be hiding on his premises somewhere after speaking to his girlfriend, now my mom, about it, and being convinced by her that she was going to cut the window screen when he was gone, hide in the house, and kill him. They found nothing and said the area attracted a lot of transients and nomads. My father then made the mistake of telling his engineer buddies at work, which resulted in them bidding him farewell at the end of each shift in the form of asking that he say hi to Mary Lou for them. My dad never saw her again. He still questions what could have been in that bundle that she's so admittedly protected. He'll never know. Number 3. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to meet the parents of an 8-year-old boy who claims to be a reincarnate of my dead wife. That's the first time I've used that phrase, verbally or written, and it still doesn't seem like my reality, but it is. And I'd like to tell you about it and maybe hear some of your thoughts and get some advice. You know the drill. It's a throwaway account, and I've given all the people involved pseudonyms. Over a decade ago, my first wife Lauren was killed in a plane crash. She and I met in college and were married for nearly 3 years before her death. I'm sure it goes without saying that it was a devastating and dark period in my life. Experiencing the unexpected death of someone you love is an indescribable sort of torture. For about a year, I felt like the entirety of my existence took place in a state completely beyond my control. Have you ever listened to a vinyl record but left it on the player for too long? You know that static that occurs when the record just spins and spins, but there's nothing to play? It's like that. From time to time, there were crying jags, triggered by something totally minuscule, like passing a woman who smelled vaguely like her, or hearing a song that was special to us. Those big emotional meltdowns got less severe as time passed. But to this day, there are still things I can't do, can't say, can't eat, can't think about, because they remind me too much of her, and they remind me too much of that time. Anyway, those lost years are another story altogether. I've been remarried for just over 4 years, and I have a young son who's almost a year old. My wife Julie is an amazingly supportive and understanding woman. It's not easy to date or marry or start a life with a widower, but she's done it and given me my life back. She respects the emotions that come around the time of Lauren's birthday and the anniversary of her death. Although I will always grieve for Lauren, I love Julie, and most of my days are spent in the complete bliss of new fatherhood. I have a career I love in commercial architecture, and look back on the years after the crash almost like people view old videos of themselves. It was me, yeah, but I wasn't really there. I first found out about the boy and his family the day before the long Labor Day weekend. I was getting ready to leave the office when my assistant Sherry popped into my office with a phone message. It was a producer from a major cable TV channel, which naturally piqued my interest. There have been times where projects I've worked on have been featured in local news programs, and I was once even interviewed for a book. But nothing as big as this woman's message suggested. I immediately called back, and her assistant put me right through. I'll call the producer Samantha. Samantha introduced herself and explained that she was involved with the show about paranormal events. She was a little vague on exactly what kind of events, and that she had been contacted by a family that felt that they had a connection to me. She wondered if I would be able to meet with her to discuss the details and possibly partake in the segment on the show she was producing. She suggested I fly out to the city where the show was produced and asked if I would be available for a number of possible production dates. When I pressed her for more details, she admitted that the show focused on children who felt they had lived past lives, and that there was a child who believed he was the reincarnate of a victim of the crash that Lauren had perished in. I think she even used that word, perished. This is going to make me sound like an idiot, but it took a couple seconds to compute what she was actually saying. That this kid thought he was Lauren reborn. It's just not something you'd ever expect to hear, and so it's a bit foreign to the brain when you actually do. I asked why this kid thought he was Lauren, what clues that there were, and all Samantha kept repeating was that she'd like me to fly out so we can meet and discuss it. But there were a lot of uncanny things that this kid knew, and there were other things she needed me to confirm. So, here's what I immediately knew that I wasn't going to do. I wasn't going to get on a plane and meet this kid in some studio and listen to his story and be gang rushed by producers and cameras trying to catch my reaction as he claimed to be my dead wife. And I told Samantha that. Actually, I said if she thought I was some pathetic asshole who was too caught up in grief to think logically, that she was wrong, and that she could take her exploitive trash television and peddle it to someone else. I told her she was a lowlife for preying on people who lost someone, and that she was a social leech who should be ashamed to look at herself in the mirror. I slammed the phone down and actually congratulated myself on my restraint. There was a lot more I wanted to say, to be honest. I went home and told Jules everything she said, and she listened to me rant and then mope, and then cry while pacing around the kitchen, slugging back Yinglings. And then, when I was all done, she listened some more. "What if?" was all she said, and I shrugged because I didn't know the answer. A month or so passed, and although I'd like to say I forgot about the call, the truth was I hadn't. I couldn't. And then I got a letter. It was delivered to work, which I assume is the only public way to find me, and I had a feeling as to what it was before I even opened it. The boy's mother had written me. She told me that her son, whose name is Ryan, had displayed peculiar qualities ever since he was very little. He would often tell stories that seemed to have happened to someone much older, many years ago. He would recall events that she knew never happened to him in vivid detail. Everyone would comment on his vivid imagination and intelligence. And then the nightmares started. Nightmares about plane crashes, about fire, full of fear. He'd wake up shaking and sweating. The doctor said it was night terrors and suggested some ways to help relieve his stress. But they didn't abate. He was an otherwise happy, well-adjusted kid. He didn't have morbid thoughts, and he wasn't depressed. But as he got older, and his vocabulary got stronger, his stories changed too. They became more detailed, and they seemed to be told from the point of view of a woman. When he was 6, he took his mother's razor in the bathtub and shaved one of his legs, perfectly, without even a nick. When asked why, he replied that he just wanted to make sure he knew how to do it. In a department store, he walked up to a mannequin wearing a dress and felt the material, running his hands over it. He asked his mother, "Didn't I have one like this, but it was blue?" She laughed it off and asked when he could have possibly had a blue silk dress, and he replied, "Before the crash." After that, she started to pay closer attention to his stories, keeping a log that she described as a clue book. She admitted that she was afraid, at first, that something was wrong with Ryan, that he was mentally ill or something. But the more he talked and the more she asked, the more she became convinced that he was expressing real memories of a life he had once lived. She put some clues together and came up with Lauren's name, and then mine. She promised to tell me more if we could talk on the phone or meet, but she wanted to offer me some compelling evidence to show me that she wasn't some kind of scammer. She assured me that she just wanted answers for her son, and that was the only reason she contacted Samantha and her team. If I was uncomfortable, we didn't have to participate at all. Enclosed was a folded piece of construction paper, the kind a kid would draw on. Indeed, it was a kid's drawing, done in marker, and I knew within a second what it was. It was my wedding day, drawn by an 8-year-old kid who lives nearly 1,000 miles away. I'm there, beard, glasses, bow tie, blue shirt. Lauren is there in a pink dress and bare feet, with a matching pink streak in her hair. We are standing in the grass, and there is a sign with the name of the historic grounds that we were married on. In the picture, I am handing my wife something that looks like a grenade. In actuality, it is a compass I presented her with as we said our vows. It was engraved with our wedding date and a quote from our song, "Mazzy stars, fade into you." Lauren carried that compass with her, always. I assume it was with her the day the plane crashed, as I've never seen it again. There were exactly 22 people at our wedding, including us and the officiant. Aside from a smattering of Kodiak prints, there were no photographer, no videographer. There was no website or wedding registry. Nothing was online back when we'd wed. There was no way this picture can exist. No way Ryan or anyone in his family could have known of any of this. I never even told Julie about the compass. So here I am, sitting at the office, counting down the hours until I can leave and go pack my bag. Our flight leaves tomorrow morning, and Julie and I will be at lunch with Ryan's parents tomorrow afternoon. I don't know what I'm looking for. Not really answers, because I don't think that there will be any. A good part of me wants to sit down and find out this is all some elaborate scam for someone's 15 minutes of fame. But the other part of me is curious. Don't get me wrong. I don't, for 1 second, believe that Lauren is stuck inside an 8-year-old kid's body. Whatever this is, it's not her. She's gone. And Ryan's mom has been very clear that he is his own kind. In many ways, very different from Lauren. And don't even suggest I'm out for anything pervy. That's not what any of this is about. Could it be that some part of her subconscious has melded with his? Could he be tapping into her memory somehow? Some way? Is part of who she once was not part of who he is? Does that happen to all of us? Is she, and I hate to even type this because it's ridiculous, haunting him? I don't know what's going on, but I need to find out. For all of us. Here's me with the compass. Even the color of the bow tie is right. I can't show the whole picture because it has identifying information. And also because it's become something kind of sacred to me. Thank you for listening to another 3 true scary stories from Reddit. If you liked this video, don't forget to leave a like, and also subscribe for even more dark stories. Good night everybody, and stay safe.